Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's War Correspondent special report. With me, of course, is Mr. Jay Weidner. You can find him at jweidner.com. He is, of course, the producer of JFKX, Solving the Crime of the Century, and the author of the book, The Mysteries of the Great Cross of Henday. Jay, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
Hey, good. How are you, man?
Doing well. Crazy times, Jay. Things are getting crazier by the day. I'm happy to have you on. It appears that today is very fortuitous to do this show here to War Correspondent. It looks like maybe World War III has just started. If you
Yep.
guys are watching the mainstream news, we're seeing the missiles get through the Iron Dome, so to speak, and much, much more. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. We are currently triple casting on YouTube, X, and also on Rumble. We might drop the YouTube feed here in just a couple of moments, just in case we trigger some of those bad keywords there for that audience. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Jay, I wanted to have you on the show. A couple of things we wanted to talk about. First of all, we're seeing that Congress is acting up again and having more of these UAP, UFO hearings. We're getting more of that rhetoric by the day. Just recently, also, police stations have been given these handbooks on how to deal with UFOs. And just recently, also in the mainstream news, we're being told here not to worry, that we're going to have a second moon in our orbit here for about 2 months, starting about a day ago here for the next 2 months. So it very much seems that Cliff might be correct with some of the WebBot data suggesting that we are heading into some contentions with ET, whether that's the fake blue beam alien invasion scenario or real stuff or a combination of both is the question here for today and for the audience. Your first take on all of this rhetoric ramping up. Do you think we're changing a page, so to speak, or changing chapters in this human history, starting something very new here, perhaps as soon as today? Jay, what do you think is going on?
Well, I think that we have two movies going for the world, and one movie has been dominating the scene for as long as we've been alive, or even longer. But a new movie began emerging about 30 years ago or so. And I don't know if it was by design or organic or whatever, but the new movie, at first, no one was watching it. And then after the COVID crisis, the audience about quadrupled. And now I believe more people are watching the new movie than are watching the old movie. And so, and what this new movie is doing is it's readying us for all sorts of possibilities, opening up your mind, waking up and seeing the world for what it is. And so I think that something really weird is going on, something I think is momentous. And what I tell everybody around me, whatever it is that they're planning to do, they're doing it now. And so I believe that whatever it is that they are doing, and there's 100 scenarios as to what it's going to be, I think we're at the door is opening now. We're going to be able to see it, and we're going to be able to see everything very clearly, including who's doing this to us. And so, yeah, I think that we're very close to a kind of revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And even the Nazca mummies that I was part of discovering, they've now proven that those are organic creatures with skeletons and everything in them. And there's so many UFO sightings nowadays. Have you noticed? I mean, even here in my area, we're seeing more UFOs than we've ever seen. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's something going on, something very, and mainstream science is now copying to the whole thing. And so I follow this guy, Professor Simon, on YouTube. He's this old guy, old English guy. He seems to be like some kind of doorway into what science is now allowing to be thought, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like letting loose with all this UAP, because I actually believe UAP is a more proper, um,
Term.
yeah,
Yeah.
proper than UFO. They're not, a lot of them aren't objects, by the way. They're plasma beings that are flying
Mm-hmm.
around. So
Right.
it's a multitude of things. It's our
Yeah.
equipment, it's our stuff, it's the alien stuff, and it's, different life forms that are made out of plasma.
Can I
So
ask you, in terms of this movie, as you're talking, I'm thinking of the Plato's Cave, the allegory, where for thousands of years here we're sitting watching this movie, and now suddenly some people are getting out and seeing perhaps the real reality, whether it's this or what you just mentioned, the new kind of science that's been allowed to perpetuate here on that YouTube channel you just mentioned. Do you think that we're moving from one movie to another movie, which is another perhaps controlled opposition? Or are we looking at Plato's Cave here, where we're completely moving out of the matrix and we're seeing reality for what it is, and it's really leaking into our reality here? Do you think there's still that possibility of this second movie being also a movie within the first movie, Jay?
I no, I thought that for a while, but I don't believe that anymore. And the reason I don't believe it is because the other people that are making the other movie, they're starting to make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes you would not have made, say, 10 years ago. So that tells me that they're reacting to the other movie, but they don't know how to react to the other movie. First, they ignored it, Schopenhauer's three laws, right? First, they ignored it, and then they ridiculed it, which is we're just coming out of that phase where the whole ridicule of conspiracy theories and all that, and now we're moving into,
The
this.
vehemently opposed.
Yeah, the other day and on Sunday we had this, what is it, Rescue the Republic thing. We lasted like 7 hours in Washington D.C. and it had all of these brand new ex-normies who just in the last 3 years had come out and they were completely in the box. I followed them all for years. I know what they were thinking 3 years ago, and good, come on over. It's great. We love it and everything. But they act like they're at the beginning of this movement, and this movement's been going on for a long time, I assure you. So
Right.
I'm glad that they're here. So the ground, we're in a political restructuring. It happens every 80 years. We go through a political restructuring, and we're going through it right now, and it's going to be worldwide.
Mhm.
And the aliens and all the other stuff is all going to be part of it, and it's going to be amazing. The new technologies that are coming out, the the kind of I don't give a what by a lot of people now. So they're just saying things out in the open. Twitter or X or whatever it's called has really helped release a lot of stuff. And a lot more stuff is going to get released. I assure you. I know people who are planning on releasing all sorts of technologies for free. And it's going to be a wild dynamic. What's happened is that um, the rebels, you might call them, they've given up playing the political game. They realize they can't win, so they're just going to release the technology. They're the ones that possess the killer technology, and so they're just going to release it now. That they believe that will change the political landscape, and I believe they're right.
Well, we'll get into that in just a moment here. Before we do that, and while we're still on Rumble, I wanted you to speak to the passing of our friend Bruce Cesal. Let me bring back my schedule page here for the audience members. He passed away here a couple of weeks ago. In somewhat of an odd manner. The last time I spoke to the family, um, they mentioned that the cops had not yet ruled out foul play. They needed to do an autopsy. That could take a while. That's the last information I have. So he seems to have departed abruptly, and at the same time, he had told me that he had received death threats. And over years of the doing videos with him too, he always had a lot of troubles. A lot of hackers physically breaking computers, where he had to buy new devices and all that, losing data and stuff like that. So he's been basically targeted for quite some time. And I think you mentioned this on the video the other day too, that although he had almost 100,000 or maybe just over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, the view count on his videos was very, very low. It didn't really make sense to the amount of subscribers. So there seemed to be some banning or shadow banning at the time. But nevertheless, man, he got some cool stuff. Like throughout the years of my doing videos with him, he showed us some really, really interesting things. Structures, what appeared to be fleets of UFOs on the moon, fighting on the moon, explosions, all this cool stuff. And now, for now at least, that appears to be gone. And this is on the heels of the mainstream news announcing that, hey, we have a second moon. Man, I wish Bruce was here to put his telescope on this thing, because Cliff I was saying, is it an asteroid or is it a mothership of some sort? What the hell is really, really going on? So, first, talk to Bruce about, or to the audience about why you liked watching Bruce's channel and why you were surprised to the amount of data he was permitted, at least for that time, to share with the audience, Jay.
Yeah, so 30 years ago, I was hanging out with Richard Hoagland, and we went to all of the NASA facilities over about a year and a half and examined all the photographs, the photographic equipment, how everything was done. It was like the most thorough deep dive I'd ever done. I was writing a book about it, and we found stuff all over the moon, all over the lunar surface that NASA's airbrushers had missed. We talked to people who had airbrushed stuff out. They told me straight up, yeah, that's what I did for NASA. I airbrushed objects off the moon. And so when I saw Bruce sees all stuff, I was just going, wow, what a brilliant idea. And I actually had the same idea in 2020. I was going to do exactly what he did. I live in an area without any city lights, so it would have been optimal as hell to do it. And I had the money. I was ready to buy the telescope and the camera. And then Corey Good sued me, and all that money had to go to the attorneys. So I wasn't able to do it. Yeah, see, when you do things like sue people, and you have all sorts of ramifications that you're not thinking of. Now, I was never going to broadcast anything I found on YouTube. I was just doing it for myself, right? And I wonder what happened to Bruce's equipment. I really do. But yeah,
I offered the family when I spoke to them, if they have a plan or contingency plan. Is there somebody in the family that wants to take it over? Can we archive the information? I made myself available to them, and if they need help, I said I can offer tech support and maybe financing or do group financing too if we needed to do that. They said they'd get back to me. So, but they seem to have a plan at least for safekeeping the material for now. But I don't know where his microscope is right now.
Yeah, well, I'd contribute money to keeping his stuff up on YouTube or whatever it takes, because it's really important. And what was great about him was that he found stuff that, since I haven't looked in 30 years, right? And I don't have a high powered telescope, but he found, I'm telling you what, they've been building it out, is all I can tell you. Since I looked 30 years ago, and what Bruce C's all found, it was like, wait a minute, this is way a lot more than what we were finding back 30 years ago. So I think that somebody's been very active over the last 30 years on the moon, and Bruce discovered it. And I really was worried about him, to be honest with you. As you know, I had an incident over this with the authorities, and it was in this time 30 years ago in 1994. Richard Hoagland and I had a mutual friend who got us a appointment at one of the top investment firms in Seattle, and we had each had 5 minutes to present our case. And so I went first, and I basically said that we're looking for $25 million to shoot a rocket up into the moon from a Caribbean island and orbit the moon about 45 times with a 3-dimensional video camera, beaming everything back to the Earth. And we'd last about 45 orbits before it would collapse and decay and crash into the surface of the moon. But in that time, we would get 45, orbits worth of video, of high quality video. We fly.
And these were venture capitalists you're talking to?
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much. That's
okay.
You would know who they were if I told you. I don't want to tell you.
Okay.
Sue me. Anyway, so I said, we're going to make an IMAX movie. It's going to be about 35 minutes long. It's going to be called Return to the Moon. And that was my end of my 5 minutes. And I looked, and all these grim-faced, gray-suited, balding dudes were all like that.
I can imagine. I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Oh, they thought they were going to make hundreds of millions of dollars off of this. And then Richard got up and he explained the mechanics of how the rocket would work in the camera and how you would beam everything back and how you'd record. It was actually quite brilliant, I got to say.
Okay.
That part was really brilliant because I didn't come up with any of that, but he did. Anyway, so they got all excited. We were there for like 4 or 5 hours, and they started assigning different guys to do different tasks. And
So your 5 minutes lasted 4 hours?
yeah,
Okay.
they were going to call like the top names in Hollywood to put their names on it, and the whole thing. They were really going for it, right? And we were going to be named executive producers, and we're going to get some small smidgen amount of money. But anyway, one guy got assigned to see if they could make the camera would work. Another guy got assigned to due diligence on us. Another guy got assigned to due diligence on the whole project. You know, there's like 5 or 6 huge bigwigs getting assigned to do all this stuff. And then we kind of got ushered out. We were flying high after we got out of the building. You know, thought, this is going to be amazing. Wait till they see what's really up there. You know, it's going to be mind blowing. And they called us for about a week or a week and a half or so. They called us every day, got updates, and they were working with some top people that you would know who they were. And then suddenly, after about a week and a half, the calls died out and stopped. And we were like, oh no, what's going on? So I was working on a production in Seattle, and I lived on Bainbridge Island, which is across the Puget Sound. And every night I have to take the ferry back and forth to my work. And I was getting on the ferry a couple of weeks after the meeting, and there I saw the guy that got assigned to do diligence on the entire project. His name was Frank, I'll call him. And I was like, hey, Frank, how you doing, man? And Frank had this really weird look on his face, and he kind of swallowed and gulped and said, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. We went over to like far away on the ferries we could get from everybody. And I said, so what's going on with the project? And he said, well, I called up the head of NASA. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. And because I trained Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong how to fly helicopters. I was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and I used to fly helicopters into the DMZ and pull GIs out that were wounded. 57 missions I did. And I was like, whoa, really impressed with this guy now. And he says, yeah. So anyway, I called up the head of NASA. I told him what we were doing. And there was this long silence when I got done describing what we were about to do. And then he said, Frank, you're not launching anything. All right. We'll blow it out of the sky. Do you understand me? Nobody's going to the moon without our permission. Nobody. And you definitely don't have permission. Oh, and do me one more thing, Frank. Never call me again. And slammed the phone down. Wow. And really shook up Frank. And I could tell it must have just happened because he was really shook up. And I was like devastated. And so, you know, we parted our ways, and about maybe a week later, I was in my house on had acreage on Bainbridge Island with all these really tall Pacific Northwest trees, and had a long driveway through this dense forest to get to my house. And I was sitting there, it was raining one night, and all of a sudden I saw these headlights heading down my driveway. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Nobody's coming to visit me. So I open up the door and I see this car, and then Frank gets out of the car, and pouring rain, just gushing rain. And I say, hey, Frank, come on in. And he says, no, I don't want to come in. And I was like, oh, okay. So what's going on? And he said, well, at that meeting that you had, you told everybody that you were writing a book about all of this, that you'd already written it, and you were looking for a publisher. I said, yeah. And he said, well, my friends wanted me to tell you that you need to throw that book in the fireplace. Never publish it, never let any human eyes ever see it. And that's all I got to say. See you later. Got back in the car and drove away. And I was like, holy shit, you know? So I burned the book, and because I was scared, and I had a family, and I didn't know what to do. And I was all alone in all of this because Richard wasn't living anywhere near me, but
Right.
I was living right in the thick of the whole thing because Richard was living in New York at the time. So I was living right with all these guys. They all lived around me, the wealthy businessmen who were now well aware of everything that was going on. And so that when with that in mind, when I started watching Bruce Sees All, I got really worried about him. And it's like I noticed that there couldn't possibly be only 310 people that have watched those videos when he had 100,000 subscribers. And I knew he was being suppressed. And I believed every story that he told about hacking and weird people talking to him. And I was like, I don't think Bruce really understood what he was really doing. I really don't. And I'm sorry that he's gone because it was great stuff.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know where to start with that story. So originally that plan was in the 90s when you met with the VC guys?
94, exactly 3 years ago. Exactly.
So imagine like if you guys two like a movie maker, a researcher can put the ideas together to do this. Of course, anybody else on the planet could. I'm wondering if you ever heard of other people trying to do the same thing, sending a rocket to the moon and taking pictures, and what happened to them. Have you ever heard of anything else?
I was talking to the head of a major network, and and I said, "Hey, I got a proposal for you," because this is after this. This is a couple
Okay.
months afterwards. I said, "Why don't you guys just put a camera up on the moon, and then we can watch sunrises over the moon and Earth rises, and and you can use it like at the beginning of your news shows and stuff. Oh, the view of you from the moon." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh my God, that's a great idea. That's a great idea." I said, I never heard back from him.
He probably met the same guy in his driveway telling him to,
Probably did.
oh wow. Oh my god. Well, here's the thing too. Like when I started talking to Bruce and he was showing me his telescope equipment and he had a really good camera and his plans for the future. He was fundraising to get additional equipment on that thing. And I was like, wow, just a guy. He's just a guy east of Montreal and Valleyfield who put this together. Imagine what the authorities and people who have millions to put at this, what they see already. And I think, let me ask you this whole idea of the second moon or this fake alien invasion, if that's going to happen right now, let's put it in context with COVID. Actually, let me cut the YouTube feed and then we'll have this conversation. Guys, if you want to follow us here, please come and join us on the Rumble feed. Let me bring the link done in live chat for you guys here on YouTube, just to make sure we're safe and sound here. All right, so guys, yes, let me remove. Yes, I'll see you on the